So one thing that's become abundantly clear since playing more live poker for the vlog is just how few people overbet. Like pretty much nobody does this. So today I want to review a situation with you where I decided to overbet, explain why I did it, when it works, and also why you should start adding this into your post-flop strategy. Let's get into it. Good morning, how are we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video. And today we'll review a hand from vlog episode number 5, and let's get right into it. Alright, in this one we are playing 1-2 and are on the button. Bunch of limpers to us. 4 of them look down at ace deuce of hearts and decide to limp this behind. And this is a totally fine limp behind. We really don't need to raise this over 4 limpers. We can definitely just limp a suited ace, like a weak suited ace like this one behind, and play it out. We'll do just fine. End up going very multi-way to the flop of ace 10 8 rainbow, no hearts, checks around to us, and I decide to fire this for 10. And a lot of players would consider checking this behind, so I think it's worth talking about it for a quick moment. So even though we have the weakest top pair hand imaginable in this spot, and we're never getting our opponents to fold a better hand, number one, it's very unlikely that they have any better hands in their range, because if they had something like 2 pair or set or whatever, more likely that either would have been raised pre-flop or bet here into us on this board. I just don't see this being checked a lot of the time. Maybe there's some like ace 5 kind of stuff, but ultimately I think with so many people, at least somebody would have bet with a better hand a decent chunk of the time, which means more of their hands, if they are going to continue, are going to be second best to ours. That's important to note. And then the other thing that I really like considering is kind of not allowing them to capitalize and actualize equity for cheap, right? If we check this behind and they have something like a gut shot, we're just giving them a free chance to improve, versus we bet and one of two things happen. Either A, they decide to fold that equity, okay, or B, they decide to continue with it at an incorrect price, and that's great for us too, especially when we have position and we can just make decisions on turns and rivers way better than they can. So I really like betting this rather than just taking a weak check like I know a lot of players will. So definitely fire here. So with all that said, let's continue going on. Big blind calls. Everybody else folds, and I'm going heads up to the turn, which is a beautiful deuce of diamonds. Our opponent checks to us, and we fire out for 20. So obviously this is a ridiculously good turn card for us, and we definitely want to be firing. There are very few hands that our opponent could have that are better than us, maybe the occasional ace 8, but if they had something like 2 pair or a weird set with like pocket ace or something like that, I think that they are more likely to either lead that off on the flop or check raise instead of going for the check call. I think the check call really pushes a lot of those combos either completely out or most of the way out. So as it's currently running out, the deuce of diamonds, maybe opens up a little bit extra for them. Maybe they have like a pair plus draw now or a double draw, but at the end of the day, all of those things are things that we completely crush, and as such we definitely want to be value betting against them. I think my bet was a little bit small here. I think this could have been something like 25 instead of just 20. It's a little nitpicky, but it definitely is important when you're looking to absolutely maximize value against players who, when they continue, are going to have a lot of second best stuff, and there's not going to be a tremendous amount of elasticity difference between a $20 and a $25 bet. It's not true against everyone, but in spots where it is true, definitely be on the lookout for it and use that slightly larger sizing. So as said, let's get on with the action. So they finally end up making that call. River comes off the ace of spades. No complaints at all on this run out. They check to us, and I fire this out for 110. So obviously firing 110 into a $73 pot would be considered an overbet. It is more than the size of the pot right that moment. And I think this is a really good spot to overbet. And the reason is well, kind of multifold. So first and foremost, this person is a tag reg, so they're definitely paying attention. They're thinking about the game. Maybe they're not thinking about it as great as they possibly could, but they're definitely trying, and that is very important to note. Number 2 is they see me as a reg as well, probably not on the tag spectrum, though they probably view me as a little bit looser. I've been playing pretty wide and aggressive in this session, and that's definitely something to note, because if they are paying attention to you, then they're going to be trying to develop reads and think about your range and think about your frequencies just the same. Again, they might not be perfect at it, but they're at least trying to do that. So if they're thinking about me and my range, then they probably don't think I have a tremendous amount of super strong value combos in my range, simply because if I had aces preflop, I'm not limping behind 4 limpers. Same thing with 10s, same thing with pocket 8s, same thing with ace 10. So maybe we're looking at like ace 8 or ace deuce, and probably not a tremendous amount of boated stuff other than that. And then beyond that, there are a tremendous amount of busted draws here, or things that I could just be turning into bluffs overall. So that is definitely going to be factoring in here, and it's actually one of the things that Villain says as they're thinking about facing this bet is, I don't really believe you, this doesn't really make any sense. And as soon as you can start getting a tag reg to think like that, you probably have a great situation to consider making an overbet, thinking about how they're going to view that. Do they say that kind of statement because it doesn't make any sense, it's too big, I fold? Or do they say it because it's too big, it doesn't make any sense, and as such I'm going to get more inelastic with maybe 10x, maybe 8x, maybe another ace, whatever it is. So since we're reviewing this handoff session, let's pull out a couple of tools and explore this at a more mathematical and technical level. So I'm going to use my River Bet versus Check EV spreadsheet, and I'm also going to use Flopzilla Pro. Let's start with the spreadsheet overall and plug in a couple different numbers. So the pot size right this moment before we bet is 73 bucks, and let's start by analyzing a more quote normal size, right? A lot of people would probably fire here for something like 45 or 50 bucks, something around 2/3 ish pot. So I think it's really helpful to start with comparing what does a quote normal bet look like comparative to something like an overbet or any sort of atypical bet, really, when I'm doing this kind of analysis. And then we just need 2 more inputs so we can get the EV for this play. So when we're in Flopzilla, we plug in our opponent's range, and I just kind of built this out. Again, they were in the big blind pre-flop, they checked it, so we're removing things like pocket aces and pocket 10s and pocket 8s. Maybe you can throw 8s in there occasionally, fine. But ultimately, it's a lot of like kind of 10x hands, because these are all hands that they would have checked with preflop, check called flop with, then check called turn with, and then check the river. So what kind of hands do those look like? So this is what I'm throwing in right this moment, and you notice that against the entire range with 100% of it checked in, we still have 100% equity, 100% win, and that's going to be true whether we bet the small number, a normal number, an overbet number, doesn't matter. It doesn't impact that at all based upon the range that's been assigned here. So there's going to be 100. And then how often they fold is the really, really important kicker. So within Flopzilla, let's go in and set a 2-color system. So we're going to use blue for all the hands they're going to continue with, and gray for all the hands they're going to fold. And let's just assume that they are going to continue always for the $45 number with middle pair or better, and they're going to fold essentially all of the busted draws. So they're going to continue the 82% of the time and fold the other 18% of the time. So we go back into the spreadsheet. How often are they going to fold? That's 18%, and we're looking at EV of positive 110. So let's keep that in our back pocket. So for a moment, bear with me, let's make the assumption that our opponent is going to be maximum inelastic here, that even when we fire for $110 as the overbet, that they are going to continue with all of those same hands. They're going to talk themselves into, wait, your bet doesn't make any sense, and as such they're going to call wider. They're still going to fold their draws, and we're just going to go forward from there. So we're at the exact same folding frequency of 18%. However, our bet size is going to be larger since we're firing for 110 instead of 45, and now we notice that our EV jumps up considerably, up to $163 profit. But maybe you're looking at this and you're like, well, I don't think that's really fair. I don't think they're actually going to continue with all of those hands against a $110 overbet. Maybe they're only going to continue when they have trips or better at this point. Okay, fine. So let's remove all of those middle pairs, and now we're in a situation where they continue 27% of the time, fold the other 73%. Now let's go in and change the folding frequency to 73, click enter, and you notice that we still have an EV positive to the tune of 103. So just slightly worse than it was with the $45 bet getting continuance from a tremendous amount of hands. Now, of course, every single second best combo you throw in here means they're going to be folding less often, and as such, your EV is just going to get higher and higher and higher. So let's just say you were going to go into middle pair, right click it, just for whatever reason, throw in the king 10 hands, good. And what do we got here? Now we notice that the folds are at 59% instead. 59, and all of a sudden you notice that EV starts creeping up, and now it's higher than the 110 EV from the $45 bet. really important to note. So essentially, when you're in a situation where you're looking at your opponent's range, there are lots of second best hands, and a lot of those hands are going to get very inelastic and won't really believe that overbet, and you have one of those monster nuttish hands. That is an excellent situation to consider going for the overbet with your value stuff. Now, obviously, if you're trying to create a balanced range, you need to throw a couple of different bluffs in here, but ultimately, if you're playing any sort of aggressive on boards like this, you should be able to find a couple of busted draws that you could throw in there, so that way you're not totally unbalanced if you're against a player who you find that is important against. So there is one other important factor that I haven't really mentioned yet, and I just want to give it to you so it's in your back pocket, even though we're not going to do a full analysis on it, is one of the other things to consider is if you bet, say, a $45 number, can you induce check raises from that number? So if your opponent has a tremendous amount of like busted draws or something and you bet 45, could you induce them to check raise? If you fire 45, they check raise to like, I don't know, 120 or something like that with busted draws, and you could obviously get more money that way. That is a consideration as they have fewer and fewer of those kind of like busted, weakish, total trash combos. That is something that kind of fades me away from that, but I at least wanted to give you that information in case you're like, this seems a little bit incomplete. That's one of the major incomplete areas that you could check out. Again, here, I don't think it's a huge thing because not a ton of our opponent's range is that busted draws, and based upon how they've been playing, I didn't see them making a tremendous amount of aggressive check raises on the river, just again, based upon the way they specifically had been playing in this session. So with all of that said, let's continue on. Our opponent takes a very long time, not really sure what to do in this situation. Start talking out loud a little bit, saying it doesn't make any sense that I'm doing this, which I'm inclined to agree. Push their chips across the line, I show them the bad news, and they muck it away. So again, a situation where I think it makes a lot of sense to go for the overbet. I think our opponent is going to talk themselves into calling more inelastically with those second best hands, and as such, why miss the bigger bet that they're going to gladly call when the smaller bet is going to get called by the exact same hands, but you're just leaving chips on the table. So again, excellent situation to consider the overbet based upon all of the factors and parameters that we discussed earlier. So as with all poker math exploration, it's really important to understand that the output we got today is based upon all of the input variables that I had, based upon the range that I assigned, the continuance frequencies that I was assigning, and if you disagree with any of those and you want to do your own exploration with maybe a different range or maybe a different continuance frequency from your opponent, or maybe even against different bet sizes other than just 45 and 110, you can definitely get my spreadsheet pack today, splitsuit.com/sheets, throw in your own variables and see what the mathematical output looks like. And if you come up with anything cool, find anything that's really good, please do not hesitate to let me know. So if you're wondering, how do I get better at finding situations like this in real time? Because obviously at the poker table, you're not going to be able to pull out a calculator or a spreadsheet. One of the best ways to get better at this in real time when you only have seconds to do so is by spending good off-table time in between session time studying the right things. And if you're really looking for doing that exact kind of stuff, I would definitely suggest my post-flop workbook. I essentially took the years and years of study that I've done to find situations exactly like this and laid them out in workbook form with a complete answer key, over 1,700 questions, and pretty much everything you need to know to really start looking at post-flop at a more technical level. If you're looking for this kind of stuff specifically, the river play section is excellent for that. Compares things like different bet sizes, so that way you can take a more EV viewpoint of things like normal bets versus atypical bets, be them smaller ones or even things like overbets exactly like this video. Again, splitsuit.com/postflop to learn more, pick up your copy, or you can always find it on Amazon if you prefer the paperback. But either way, thank you so much for hanging out today. I really hope you enjoy this, and if you want to catch the full episode of vlog episode number 5, I'll leave a link for that down in the description box below or in one of those card things up there. So as always, if you need anything at all, please do not hesitate to let me know. And of course, a thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed it would be massively appreciated. Otherwise, I'll see you back shortly with a brand new video. In the meantime, good luck out there and happy grinding.